Hello and welcome if you're new to my channel, and if you're a subscriber, a warm welcome back. This video is part of my viewer comment response series where I respond to a comment made by a viewer against one of my videos. And the particular comment for this video goes as follows. Hi Anesu, I'm going completely off topic, but I was wondering what your take is on children wearing high-end luxe brands. I feel I'd like to introduce her to quality that I wear or closer to it. Thank you. We had a few exchanges in the comment section, and her response to my initial comment: I find luxury living an important experience for melanated folk, especially to normalize excellence in our daily lives for a change. When I saw this comment, it brought such a huge smile to my face because it addressed a topic I've been wanting to talk about for months, but I just wasn't sure how to introduce it. Children, luxury, the pros and cons and so forth. And the melanated aspect, which is very much applicable to me. So when this question came up, I just thought, oh my goodness, this is the universe speaking to me. This is how I'm going to initiate the topic. Because the virtues of quality were instilled in me from the get-go. From as early as I can remember, it was quality. The emphasis was always on quality, examples of quality, what is quality. And it has shaped my entirety in terms of how I purchase things, what I consider first and foremost. So I was excited when I saw the particular question. I get a lot of requests to create videos as part of the viewer comment request series in the comment section. And I've had a few people ask a couple of times. I haven't forgotten. The issue is I'm a one-man band. It takes me a while to turn videos around. It's not something I typically can do overnight unless it's something like this particular video where I'm just talking from my own mind. I'm sourcing my own experience as the content. But please bear with me. I'm Anesu Sagonda, and I produce educational luxury content for anyone after the finer things. Whether you're young and starting out in life and wanting to reap the benefits of buying quality from the get-go, or you're new to money and wanting to learn how to navigate the terrain, or you're into luxury but you want to focus more on quality under the radar brands, then my content is geared towards you. When I started recording this video, it was pouring with rain. The rain has since stopped, it's sunny, and hence the change of location. It's not often we have consistently good weather in the United Kingdom. So during the summer months, I prefer to record outside so I can enjoy a little of the warm weather we get for the short period of time. But back to the subject matter of the video. Heavenly mentioned high-end luxe brands and quality, and I very much got the impression it's one and the same thing, but I wanted to qualify that statement so we're all on the same page. High-end luxe brands, you have two types. You have your known brands that I've spoken about at length in a number of videos, your aspirational brands. So think, for example, Christian Dior, Gucci, Burberry, Chloe, Fendi, Dolce & Gabbana, for example, all producing beautiful baby and children's clothing. And then you have the brands that are very much under the radar. The focus is on quality, but most of all, it's brands that are focused just on producing babies or children's clothes. They're not, for example, like Gucci that have handbags, shoes, clothes, homeware, a whole raft of different products. And you find some of them are made under license by other brands. Under the radar brands, they are focused on producing just babies and children's clothing. And the focus for them to differentiate themselves so they stand out amongst their competitors is quality. Quality is king. And you also buy into the craftsmanship, the details of the items they produce. In some cases, you have brands that are focused on handmade pieces, bespoke pieces. The clothes wash and wear well. The fabrics they use last a long time, and you find some of the items are used as heirlooms. Look at our own royal family, for example. And I'll talk about that in a second. But you're pretty much buying phenomenal quality for the child. And it ends up being fairly cheap in the long run because you buy something, cost per wear reduces the more you wear it, but the quality of the item with washing and wearing does not go down. I've got a selection of about 20 brands I'm going to mention in a second as a starting point when it comes to navigating under the radar brands for babies and children. At least you have a starting point. I have a solid selection of different styles at different price points. But what I would recommend when it comes to high-end luxe brands is a mixture of your known and your less known brands. So for example, the bulk of the clothes the baby or child would wear on a daily basis, I would source or recommend your under the radar brands, because you want quality, you want performance, long-term performance. Whereas your occasional pieces for special events, birthdays, parties, weddings, christenings, or your big ticket items like a really nice coat from Loro Piana. But Loro Piana again is out of the reach of the majority of people. And I remember going into Gucci beginning of the week and seeing the most stunning baby's coat, £1,200. How many people can realistically afford that? But I know there are people who can, and they want nothing but the best for their darlings. And as I always say, each to their own. But I would say your big ticket items from your aspirational brands, or if you're very much into the logo mania, that's important to you, brands like Gucci, you have Burberry, you have Fendi, for example, and then your everyday stuff, then I'd earn more on your under the radar brands. In terms of brands, I'd highly recommend as a starting point, looking at babies, children aged between 0 to 2 years. I have 4 brands focused just on that particular segment. A brand I've recommended before, Kissy Kissy. I'll attach the video above. I like Kissy Kissy because their clothes wash and wear well. I have a lot of experience with their clothes. They wash and wear well. And no matter how many times you wash and wear, they look fantastic, but you're realistically not going to be washing and wearing them for that long a period of time because children grow very quickly. But their rompers, their onesies, their growers, depending on what you call them, can be passed on or used by children, your other children, for example, or sold on. But Kissy Kissy is all about color, same sort of level. I'd also put in Pure Baby. They're a little more classic in the designs and plainer colors. I'd also throw into that equation a brand called Organic Zoo. I like them because they're organic, their clothes are unisex, and they're very much focused on the whole sustainability element. And then the brand I'd also recommend in this segment, top end, when it comes to your 0 to 2-year-olds, is a brand called Marie Chantal. And they're known for their signature wings at the back of their rompers. Moving up to your children, so that's still 0 through to about 12 years. In the mid-tier, I would highly recommend, firstly, a British brand called Trotters. Clothes are produced in Portugal, and Trotters is a great brand for somebody who's looking for British gifts. A lot of Americans, I'm told by the brand, like their clothes because they have a lot of the traditional British motifs like the soldiers, and Americans like them as gifts. It's very much a British thing. Also in the mid-tier, Little White Company, focused on using 100% cotton. I'd also throw into that equation a fantastic French brand, Petit Bateau. And then my 4th recommendation is a brand called Caramel, a British brand. Caramel I like, and I would recommend for people who like the whole matchy-matchy thing where you have mom and daughter wearing the same items. They have adults' clothes and they mimic them as well in the children's clothes as well. On the aspirational side, Dolce & Gabbana are big on the whole matchy-matchy selection as well. Jumping up to the top tier, you have quite a sizable selection of your more traditional brands, very traditional styles that are smart. Think of an incredibly heavyweight Spanish brand. That's the brand of the moment, Amaya. Amaya is a brand that's very much favored by Princess Charlotte, and she's been seen out wearing Amaya items quite recently. Amaya is a brand that you buy into the very best when it comes to your child. The styles, for example, the smocking they have is hand sewn, and you find the smocking might be on the front and the back. That adds to the price. They also focused on bespoke items. You're buying very much into the quality of the materials. They also have their own exclusive Liberty prints. It's a complete all-round product. Other fairly comparable good Spanish brands I'd also throw into their Pepper and Co. and also La Coqueta. On the French side, I'd recommend Bon Point. They also have a selection of cashmere at a fraction of the price of Loro Piana, for example. And I'd also throw in tartan et chocolat. Bon Point is more if you want something a little flashier, a little more out there for your child. I'd also like to include in that Il Gufo, an Italian brand. I'd also like to throw in Paz Rodriguez. I personally love Paz Rodriguez. And I know when I look at children's clothing, it's the one brand I've always said it's the type of clothing that is royalty. It's fit for a royal. If I was to dress a royal in something, it would be Paz Rodriguez. And any child who wears their clothes stands out. The child is very well put together. The clothes are different. They're beautiful. And they'll always be a talking point and people will notice them. And then also throw into that a shoe brand, Papoelli. When I started the video, I mentioned people are typically put off by the high cost of quality brands, but you get what you pay for. But I don't know if people also consider the flip side of the coin, which is cheap clothes are very expensive because you're always having to replace them. And in the long run, if you look back and consider how much you have spent, you may find you've actually spent more than if you had invested in quality in the first instance, which would have lasted and you didn't need to keep replacing it. What I would also suggest is when you're buying quality, especially for younger children, not necessarily buying a lot of items, but buy a few quality pieces and you wear them on a repeat cycle. So the child wears them, you wash, they wear, you wash, they wear, and you keep going until the child outgrows them. And those same clothes can then be recycled and used by other children in the family when you have other children, or if you don't have other children, they can be donated to charity, they can be given to friends, to family, or you can sell the clothes. I have seen so many groups online with women selling on their clothes, their babies' clothes they've outgrown because they're good quality, and then they sell them on and use the money to buy other clothes for the child to wear as they get a little older. You'll also find with quality clothes is that they retain their value. A lot of your big brands, think for example, Loro Piana, cashmere coat, it's over £1,000. It'll retain its value. All your children outgrow it, you sell it on and then use that money again to invest in your children. With quality, you also start to develop things like heirlooms or the bigger ticket items, you recycle them through the children. I mentioned earlier our own royal family, Princes William and Harry. We've seen quite a few of the clothes they wore as babies and toddlers being worn by their children. There's a celebrity on Instagram worth following for the children's clothes. You will thank me. It's Tamara Eccleston. Periodically, I would say every 18, possibly 24 months, she will have a massive cull of her wardrobe and she will sell some of her clothes, her children's old clothes, her sister's children. And I attended one of the sales just for the experience to see what are they selling, and they are absolutely amazing. If I was Tamara's same dress size, I would have bought a ton of stuff. But the sales are worth going for the children's clothes alone. She gives you access to some of the most swoon-worthy clothes for your children, and they're incredibly competitively priced. She also does donate some of the clothes to people from disadvantaged backgrounds. So if you fit in that category, I know from experience will be more than happy to help. So buy quality, it can be recycled, your children use it, you pass it on to other people, you can sell it on, you have those options, but you get around this whole throwaway culture that's negatively impacting the environment. And also buying quality, what it means is it forces you to be conscientious. You think about your purchases because they're expensive. You think about what you're buying, how it's all going to work, how you're going to coordinate it, for example, and even buy into things like interesting backstories of some of the brands. But quality pays for itself when you consider the superior quality of the fabrics that you're going to be getting, the comfort to your child, how soft the fabric feels against your child's skin. The clothes last for many years. They can become heirlooms. You pass them on for many years to come, provided you look after them. They wash and wear well. And what you'll also find with the high-end luxe brands is that they will focus on producing a much wider selection of styles, of designs. You're paying for the superior craftsmanship, as I mentioned with brands like Amaya, for example, where you're getting smoking at the front and the back. But when you look at just the details and the effort that's gone into creating a much better quality product in terms of the look, the feel, the comfort, the con, which is the cost of high-end luxe brands, very quickly becomes a pro because you get your money's worth. It's easier on the pocket for you as the parent because you get your money's worth, cost per wear, and also the child enjoys the clothes, and they pay for themselves in compliments. Heavenly, this is now just me to you, and I'm coming from a place of absolute love and support. When I read your comment, my heart smiled. And for a second, I wished you were close by and we could have a conversation face to face and talk about this whole concept of quality. And especially when you brought in the melanated angle to the conversation. The biggest takeaway from this is, yes, please introduce your daughter to quality. But the most important thing you need to do, and you'll be setting her up for life, is don't just introduce her to quality. Teach her what is quality. Give her examples of good quality, bad quality, poor quality, better quality, for example. But the quality you expose her to needs to touch every aspect of her life. That is how you set her up for life, in that she becomes a young lady in time who's confident, who's comfortable, who's secure around quality, around luxury. And it isn't such a taboo topic as a melanated person that she feels she's not entitled or she doesn't fit in, she isn't comfortable, she doesn't know how to maneuver. She will have grown up in her formative years being exposed to quality and knowing how to navigate it. Let me give you a couple of examples from my own childhood. I was born and raised in Zimbabwe. That's where I spent the formative years of my life. And from as early as I can remember, the virtues of quality were instilled in me by my grandparents, as I mentioned earlier. When I was at school, particularly in secondary school, I only ever had 2 pairs of school shoes. And that really annoyed me because all the other students had new shoes, school shoes every term, because theirs were scuffed, battered, torn, they'd fallen apart, and therefore they needed new school shoes. Whereas when my grandparents traveled, when they came to Europe, they always bought me a number of products, a number of items which they'd bring back to Zimbabwe and use them as teaching aids. School shoes was one of them. I only ever had 2 pairs, as I mentioned. And that's because they always focused on quality. They would spend, this is in the late 80s, early 90s, about 60, 70, 80 pounds on my school shoes. At that time, it was a lot of money. But what I ended up with were shoes that were incredibly comfortable. They were robust. No matter how badly I treated them, I kicked things, I tried to scuff them, they just would not budge. They were bulletproof and they didn't pinch my toes. Fast forward, finished high school, university, and I'm now working and buying my own clothes and shoes and so forth. And one of the first places I bought shoes was Topshop, which has since gone bust, but Topshop focused on fast fashion. And the first thing I noticed when I bought my first pair of shoes was that they were hard. The base was hard. It wasn't comfortable and soft like my school shoes. When I walked long distances, they were so uncomfortable. I'd get blisters. They were tight. They pinched my toes. They just were so different to what I'd become accustomed to. And that's when the lesson started to take effect, and I realized, what my grandparents were talking about, quality, buying good shoes that last, that are comfortable, that stand the test of time, that don't fall apart. Now I appreciated the lesson. When I was a little older, I'd say about 7 or 8, my grandmother would take me to town in the holidays, sometimes when she was running errands or to buy me something. and she needed me to try whatever it is she was buying. And depending on the time, when we were done, we would either have afternoon tea in one of the department stores at that time, Greatermans, Barbers, Meikles, or we would have lunch if it was around lunchtime, and we would always go to Wimpy. Now, Wimpy at that time, in the late 80s, was not your typical fast food restaurant. It was a little more upscale. It was a decent menu, so it wouldn't be necessarily your burgers, chicken nuggets, and so forth. You had things like steak, which you typically would have. So it would be steak for lunch at Wimpy's, or we would have afternoon tea at one of the department stores. Or if we were with my grandfather and we were meeting up with him after he had finished work, we may have afternoon tea at the Meikles, which at that time was the best hotel, in a restaurant called La Fontaine. La Fontaine is what I would call a modern day, I would equate it to a modern day 2 Michelin starred restaurant, the equivalent in Zimbabwe at that time. Or once a year we would have a big family dinner at the Meikles Hotel in La Fontaine again. And my grandmother would talk me through the 2 different places. Wimpy, we would have steak, fast food restaurant, as I mentioned, so you're in and out, it's not so comfortable. A lot of people, you don't particularly make an effort when it comes to how you're dressed. But when we went to the Meikles, and in particular La Fontaine, the emphasis would be always on wearing a really nice dress, my manners at the table, I'd sit down, put the napkin on my lap, how I eat, start from the end, work your way in. That's when I learned about medium rare steak. That's how I like my steak. It came with sides, silver service, how to talk, not talking with your mouth full. All of those lessons were taught to me during those meals. And then my grandmother would explain Wimpy's a little different to La Fontaine, the difference in behavior, the difference in the quality of the meat, the steaks. And I'd say, yes, the steak at Wimpy was different to the steak at Meikles. And the one at Meikles came with dauphinoise potatoes, different sides, whereas the one at Wimpy came with chips. So all those things I was learned, and it was through experience. Afternoon tea at the department stores, it was very different. I can only equate it to, I'm not too sure where you are, Heavenly, in the United States. Recently, I was at Bergdorf Goodman's. They have a restaurant on the ground floor, decorated by Kit Kemp, in their fairly casual, easy place. That's an equivalent. Or, for example, in the United Kingdom, going to the Marks and Spencer cafe, for example, and just having an afternoon, just having tea and scones, for example. Very easy, casual affair, but the emphasis is just on quick service, a tasty product, and you're done. Whereas with the Meikles, it's about the service, the whole performance, the quality of the food. It's everything. And then learning all of that, my grandmother talking me through the different scenarios. And what that meant as I got older, fast forward, working, going to work events and so forth, it made me a lot more comfortable and confident. When I was with other melanated people in the workplace, for example, who were on secondment in London, they would sometimes say, oh, I don't want to go there because I'm not comfortable. I don't know what the etiquette is. How do I eat? I don't know the setup. How do I dress? I'm just not comfortable in places like that. Those weren't my issues because I'd grown up being exposed to that firsthand. I learned how to behave, how to order, the difference in the quality of the food, what it meant. So certain things just didn't faze me. Exposing your daughter to all of those things from an early age in her formative years means she's learning from the very beginning. She's learning how to hold herself. She's learning what is quality, how to behave, how to choose it, how to maneuver around it. It becomes a much bigger lesson, and a lesson that a lot of melanated people haven't necessarily had. And therefore, those issues manifest themselves in situations where people say, we are not deserving, we shouldn't do certain things, because it's also the fear of, I don't know how to behave, or I don't know how to maneuver, or I don't know what to do. But if you set your daughter up well, introduce her to quality across the board with everything, she's just going to grow up into a very comfortable, secure, confident lady around luxury. But I've enjoyed making this video, Heavenly, and I hope you have learned something. There are a couple of pointers that have given you food for thought, and possibly we can start a much bigger conversation in the comment section down below. To the rest of my subscribers, thank you for watching as always, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon.